When a player dribbles a tennis ball, bouncing it rhythmically with a hand, or even ultimately with two hands, that simple act becomes a low-stress but highly effective coordination primer. The constant visual feedback, the tiny adjustments required in finger, wrist, and forearm positioning, and the cyclic cadence of bounce and control enhance the coupling between sight and motor output. Because the ball's return is relatively predictable, the exercise isolates the mapping between visual input and fine motor correction, reinforcing proprioceptive awareness in the hand and forearm. As several sources note, tennis ball drills are among the simplest yet most effective ways to develop hand-eye coordination, and then transfer that improved coordination into sports performance. By the time the player has warmed up into a steady dribble rhythm, their nervous system has already begun to adapt. Micro adjustments are being encoded, internal timing circuits are being tuned, and visual tracking is being re-engaged. That makes the transition to more reactive or complex drills smoother. Next, partner catch and drop drills add layers of unpredictability and decision-making. When a coach or partner drops a ball from varying heights, angles, or with spin, the receiver must visually detect the trajectory, compute the anticipated rebound or drift, and then coordinate hand motion to intercept or catch. This links visual sampling, where is the ball going, with dynamic hand placement and timing. Each drop becomes a mini if-then decision. I see movement, I decide where to move my hand, and I act in fractions of a second. Because the stimulus is external, not self-generated, the reaction becomes less predictable, which forces the brain to operate more reflexively and precisely. That sharpening of visual motor latency is a key reason such drills are staples of good warm-ups. Reaction ball exercises, like those irregular bounce balls with unpredictable rebound directions, heighten that unpredictability. Their erratic rebound direction or speed means the visual system can no longer rely on simple trajectory estimation. Instead, it must rapidly detect change and invoke a corrective response. In hand-eye coordination training theory, over time, the athlete's nervous system becomes better at handling noisy inputs, maintaining focus under visual uncertainty, and rapidly gating motor corrections. In match play, when a ball takes an awkward bounce or the opponent's slice skims low, that sort of practice visual reflex is what keeps responses sharp. Finally, racket shadowing, miming forehands, backhands, volleys, and slices without a ball, serves as a bridge between pure coordination drills and tennis-specific movement. As the player shadows various strokes, perhaps varying tempo, direction, or imagined ball trajectory, their eyes, upper extremities, and torso rehearse the visual motor sequence of actual rallying, except without full contact stress. In doing so, the visual system rehearses scanning the hitting zone, anticipating ball flight paths, and timing hand acceleration and deceleration. Shadowing encourages mental imagery, sharpens rhythm, and reinforces motor patterns, while the eyes remain engaged in tracking an imagined ball path. In effect, it's visual motor cross-training at a lower physical load. Many coaches treat mini tennis or shadow strokes not just as physical warm-ups, but as ways to wake up the brain, promoting alertness, preparatory timing, and early readiness of reflex circuits. Many top players deliberately incorporate rotational exercises, resistance bands, and medicine ball work into their preparation. These tools prime the core, shoulder girdle, and the entire trunk for the violent twisting, coiling, and uncoiling that characterize effective strokes, serves, ground strokes, overheads. Done properly, they increase blood flow, loosen soft tissues, refine neuromuscular patterns, and reduce injury risk, all while readying the body and mind for match intensity. When a player uses resistance bands in rotational patterns, for example, banded torso rotations, banded pull-off presses, or banded wood choppers, the muscles of the core and shoulders are activated through a controlled range while under tension. Because the bands provide variable resistance through the movement arc, the muscles must decelerate and stabilize, as well as accelerate. This strain not only has concentric power, but also eccentric control and anti-rotational stability. Over repeated use, the athlete improves proprioception around the spine, ribs, and shoulder joints. The band work helps wake up the smaller stabilizers, the deep obliques, transverse abdominis, rotator cuff muscles, and scapular stabilizers before heavier loads or dynamic efforts arrive. That enhanced neuromuscular recruitment ensures joints are ready to absorb or transmit torque when the racket begins to swing. In other words, band work helps bridge the static mobility domain, warm-ups, stretching, and the more explosive dynamic domain, serving, baseline drives. Medicine ball rotations, throws, slams, rotational tosses apply that concept into the explosive domain. By engaging the kinetic chain from the legs through hips, torso, and upper limbs, they train the coordinated transfer of energy through rotational mechanics. For instance, a rotational medicine ball throw against a wall mimics the hip to shoulder torque that occurs in a forehand or serve. A high-quality pre-match warm-up for a tennis player does more than just loosen the joints or elevate heart rate. It systematically engages the leg muscles, neuromuscular control, and balance systems so the body is ready for the rapid side-to-side shifts, sudden starts and stops, and sudden accelerations that define competitive play. Through dynamic exercises such as lateral shuffles, butt kicks, high knees, and light jogging, a player primes the legs, hips, and core, improves agility, protects against injury, and transitions smoothly into match tempo. The warm-up typically begins gently, jogging or light movement around the court to raise core body temperature, increase blood flow, and gradually mobilize muscles and connective tissues. According to tennis coaching protocols, this general phase serves as a bridge between rest and activity, ensuring that muscles, joints, and the cardiovascular system are ready to respond without shock. As core temperature rises, muscle contractile capability improves and tissues become more pliable, lowering stiffness and risk of strain under sudden motion. Once the body is warmed, dynamic drills like high knees and butt kicks are woven into the warm-up. With high knees, a player lifts the knees toward the chest in a rhythmic running or marching motion. This emphasizes hip flexor activation, coordination, and readiness of the anterior chain, quadriceps, hip flexors, core. Because tennis demands sudden forward or diagonal bursts, Having the hip flexors and quads pre-activated allows a more efficient, explosive transition into motion. The motion also stimulates neuromuscular engagement in the legs and core, priming the muscles to respond to quick acceleration. Cardio work is a core part of how tennis players warm up before matches, and its role goes far deeper than simply getting sweaty. By raising heart rate, increasing blood flow, and elevating muscle temperature, cardio warm-ups prepare the body and brain to meet the physical, mechanical, and metabolic demands of match play. These changes don't just feel good. Science shows they affect injury risk, movement efficiency, reaction speed, and consistency across the whole match. When a player begins with light cardiovascular activity, say jogging, skipping, or easy lateral running, the immediate effect is an increase in heart rate and the dilation of blood vessels. More blood gets pumped through active muscle groups, delivering oxygen and nutrients, and clearing metabolic byproducts. Because muscles receive more oxygen, they can work more efficiently when intensity rises. One crucial thing that happens very early is that muscle temperature goes up. Warmed muscles contract more powerfully, relax more cleanly, and are less likely to strain or tear when pushed. Beyond just temperature, the warm-up primes the nervous system. When heart rate and respiration increase, neural circuits involved in movement receive stronger signals. Muscle spindles and proprioceptors become more sensitive. Coordination across joints improves. Thus, the footwork, the split step, the directional changes, tennis-specific demands can be carried out with better timing and less wasted motion. There's less lag between visual cue and motor response, meaning the first few points are less likely to be cold or sloppy. Cardio warm-ups also improve joint mobility and flexibility. To begin, mobility work helps maintain or improve the freely moving range of motion in the joints most taxed in tennis: hips, shoulders, spine, particularly thoracic, ankles, and knees. Tight hips reduce the ability to rotate through the legs and trunk for forehands and serves. Stiff shoulders or thoracic spine limit overheads, serves, and reaching volleys. When mobility is lacking, the body tends to compensate, maybe with extra strain in the lower back or using more arm power than is efficient. Mobility drills, such as hip circles, shoulder-controlled articular rotations, thoracic spine rotations, gentle spinal flexion extension flows, help gradually loosen these areas so the joints can move through their normal arcs safely. Ljubicic Tennis Academy, for example, uses flows of spinal flexion/extension, hip circles, thoracic rotation, and shoulder CARS, controlled articular, rotations, to improve joint mobility precisely in the patterns a tennis player will need. Dynamic stretching complements mobility by doing stretches with movement rather than static holds. Instead of holding a position for 30 seconds or more, dynamic stretching mobilizes the muscle through a range: leg swings, walking lunges with torso twist, arm swings or arm circles, torso twists, lunges, hip openers. These let muscles, tendons, and connective tissues warm up while being actively stretched, which more closely mimics what they will endure during play. The USTA describes dynamic warm-ups and flexibility training specifically for tennis as including moves like lunge with reach back, side shuffle, high step with trunk rotation, carioca,